Agnes Nyamayarwo is a Ugandan nurse and activist whose fight against AIDS has taken her from personal and family tragedy to meeting with former US President George Bush and touring the USA with U2's lead singer Bono. She's the facilitator and founding member of the Milago Positive Women's Network and a leader in the fight against AIDS in Africa. She's also on the board of TARZO, the AIDS Support Organisation. In December 2002, she joined Bono, Ashley Judd, Chris Tucker and others on the Heart of America tour, where thousands of Americans were moved by her story and inspired to action. She's been a spokesperson for ONE, the campaign to make extreme poverty history. Agnes had left nursing to raise her 8 children when her husband died in 1992. After she discovered he had died of AIDS, she was tested herself and discovered that she too was HIV positive. Her story is one of sorrow, of courage, of persistence, and of faith. I spoke with her in North Carolina just before Bono wished her happy birthday from the stage at the U2 concert that night. Agnes, can you tell me how you ended up working alongside Bono from U2?
It all started with the AIDS in my family when I lost my husband to AIDS in 1992. And 2 months later, my son, who was 17 years old, got a mental breakdown because he could not believe that his family, his good parents could have gotten infected with HIV. And he didn't want to believe that, and he was worried about who will take care of them. And when I took him to hospital, they diagnosed he had depression. And he was treated and he went back to school. But when he went back to school, he was bullied by his friends at school. And he went back into depression. And one night he disappeared from the school. That was in July 1993. And I've never seen him again up to today. I don't know if he's alive or he's dead. And after my husband's death, I had gone for an HIV test, and I also tested HIV positive. And I had my youngest child when my husband died was 3.5 years. So when he turned 5 years, he went to a pre-primary, and he started, getting infections, flu, coughs from his friends at school. And I was treating them, and they were not getting better. And I was worried, and he was losing appetite, and he started losing weight. And I was like, could he be HIV positive? Could I have passed the virus to him unknowingly? I didn't want to believe that.
It must have been an awful thought.
Very awful. And I kept, postponing and saying, oh, okay, I should take him for an HIV test too. But I would say, oh, I don't want to get that bad news, and I would continue postponing until I saw he was very sick, and I had to take him to hospital, and we got an HIV test for him and myself. They did an HIV test on me too, and unfortunately he tested HIV positive. And that was very heartbreaking. The small kid, innocent as he was, and having this guilt of knowing that I passed the virus to him unknowingly. And at that time there were no life-saving treatment for him to take, and he was down with a very bad pneumonia. The medical people call it CPC, which was on and off until he died on the 5th of March 1995.
How did you respond to that awful train of events?
All that, when it happened, I was like, oh my God, have I annoyed God? Is there anything I've done for going through all this? Is God disappointed with me? I also got sort of disappointed in God, but I kept, looking for literature, reading about books about God, reading about the healing, and I had this very painful memories of my loved ones, and I kept, not sleeping, and I would wake up in the night and think about it until one time I felt that I think as a person there isn't much I can do, but I had to trust in God, and I tried to walk my journey with God and tried to think of what I could do in memory of my loved ones, my husband, my 2 children. What could I do which could keep my their memory alive? And I wanted to do something good. And the issue is that I wanted the other parents, not to go what I had gone through. Nursing this innocent child, losing my husband, having very difficult times. My children, others were coming out of school because I couldn't afford the school fees. So I decided to go to TASO, the AIDS support organization in Uganda, and I tried to join the group which was sensitizing the community, and I would go and give testimonies to people, and to see it and as real, that AIDS, how it affects the families and how painful it is to nurse your small kid after passing the HIV virus to him. And I've been doing this, and I always do it, and I really I think it has changed some people's lives and behaviors, and I do it all the time. I do it, and I say I'm doing it for my son Christopher, who died of AIDS. I'm doing it for my husband Augustine. I'm doing it for my Charles, my son, who disappeared, whom I'm not sure whether he's alive or dead. And
this whole work that you were doing got a bit of a boost, didn't it? Certainly I came to know about it because of Bono's involvement in the making of a video about that.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about how that all came together?
So as I used to do it in TASO, the AIDS support organization in Uganda, Bono came along with the Secretary of Treasury, Paul O'Neill, and they were visiting Uganda. They were visiting Africa, and they came to Uganda, and they came to TASO, and they asked me to give my story, which I do. I was always giving in the community to educate the community. And when I talked about AIDS in my family, and the drama group also gave their inspiration of how they give them the messages through dance and drama. And Bono was like, "You guys, are you on life prolonging treatment?" We said no, because we can't afford it, and the organization where we get treatment cannot afford it. So Bono said, "Oh, where do you get this courage to do all this?" We said, we feel that before we die, we want to save as many lives as we can. And he was like, "Wow, these are the fighters, these are the firefighters. These people should get on treatment immediately." And we were doing all this. We were weak. One would go off and go bedridden and die, and this is the time I also thought that maybe I would not make it that Christmas. That was 2002. He came in May, and I started on treatment immediately in June. And 3 months later, I was really feeling different. I was feeling some energy. I got more appetite. I was grabbing everything and eating, and my weight was back. And all my friends, their health improved. Of course, the first 1-2 months was difficult because we were, the medicine getting used to the body. But after that, we were real back on on our feet.
Just remind us how expensive these treatments are that you were taking?
At that time they were very expensive, but right now they are not, because they are about $20 a month for each person. And because of the treatment which we started, and on that time we started doing more on educating the community. And in November I get a call from Bono, and he wanted me to come to the United States to travel with him on the Heart of America tour, to be able to educate the community, the community in America, the Americans, about the problems of AIDS in Africa.
And how successful was that? What were the outcomes of that tour?
Oh, it was very successful. A lot of people sent their auction cards to their senators, to the president, and actually the president was able to come to Africa to see for himself in 2003, and I was able to meet the president then. And he had already passed $15 billion for 5 years for treatment of AIDS, TB, and malaria in Africa. And as I talked to him, when he gave me a hug, I whispered in his ear and said, when do we need this? We need this treatment as early as possible, because my friends are dying and I'm feeling bad that they keep dying every day. We need it as soon as possible. And when he went to speak, he said, Agnes told me that we need this treatment as soon as possible, and I'm going to make it possible. And we are doing all we can to make sure that treatment is available for all the people who need it. And in 2004, we got the PEPFAR signed, and the treatment started coming, and our people in Tasso started getting this treatment, and in other parts of Africa. And that was real miracle. We never expected to happen, because we were hearing treatment being given to people in European countries, in America, and to us it was beyond our reach, because we could not afford it.
I've heard Bono say that if it were any country other than Africa, probably the West would be jumping to help. Do you feel that there is a racism involved here from the West?
I don't know about that, but all I know that it is true that the European countries with America, they treat them different, because even when you look at the trade, it's not as fair as it would have been with Africa, and he's been really advocating for that too. And also because we had debts with European countries, including America, and because of his advocacy work, the debt to Uganda was cancelled, and now 4 children go to school, free primary education in Uganda, because of the debt which was cancelled. And this is great, because most people could not afford the school fees to take their children to school. And if they remain in school up to that age of primary education, it sort of gives them a chance to stay longer, not getting married, getting involved in sex, and it's also preventing them to get HIV early, in their early adolescence.
Let's just pause there for a moment. Thank you for being patient. You grab it and we'll keep going, yeah. Just stay in the same position, Agnes, will be fine, yeah. Thank you for waiting. No problem. It's been great so far. I'll just ask you a couple more questions. Do you, how do the drug companies feel about what's happening now? These drugs have to be kept at a very low price, because that's what's been announced, that they'll be supplied at that price. So do you have any resistance from drug companies? Have you heard of anything like that?
Yes, earlier on when the PEPFAR funding came to our country, it was restricted to the medicine, the drug companies here in United States. There are some drug companies who are doing generic drugs, and they are much cheaper. But after some time, we were allowed to buy the drugs to the generic companies, which are cheaper, and that would allow us to put more people on treatment, better than when we were buying the patent drugs in the United States, and they were much more expensive. And with time, we can see that the medicines are really getting lower, and we just plead to these pharmaceutical companies who are making these ARVs to make them even cheaper, so that we are able to access them. Even those who have not been able to access the treatment can start on treatment, because it's not everyone that who needs to start has already started on treatment.
Agnes, you mentioned your journey with God in this. Has the Christian faith and the Christian community been important to this work in Africa? Have they played an important role at all?
Yes, the Christian community has been very, very important to us, because there are some religious-based hospitals who are supporting people living with HIV, and they do all they can. They do the psychological part of, making people accept their diagnosis and trust in God, and have faith in God that whatever happens, God is with them and is working with them. And it's also very important for a person living with HIV who believes in God, because it's very important to us as Christians that the most important commandment is love your neighbors, you love yourself. And if you love your neighbors, you love yourself, you wouldn't want to pass the virus to this neighbor. So in prevention, the faith has really played a very big part, because you want to keep the virus to yourself. If you are young and you want to get a partner, you would want to get a partner who is with the same status, and you don't have to pass the virus to somebody new whom you don't know whether he's positive or not. And I think this is great on the side of Christians.
One final question for you, Agnes. What is your dream for Africa? What would you like to see take place?
Oh, my dream to Africa is to see everybody on treatment, who needs treatment, to be on treatment, and no more infections. And I really dream Africa free of AIDS, and the whole world free of AIDS. That's my biggest dream.
Thank you, Agnes.